When I didn't play the game enough, but I still want to talk about it. Maybe it just had too much stuff, or it wasn't quite the right fit. That's what first impressions are for, to qualify our opinions, and so today I have 5 more. Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is my new First Impressions series. Not that First Impressions really needs a series. Sometimes I just do a First Impressions video on its own, but other times I don't know if I have as much to get into in a single video, and so we're going to have these roundups for First Impressions, which as the titular intro, the titular intro, as the intro song alludes to, these are usually games where I either don't feel I've played it enough to call it a review, or alternatively where it has too much stuff that I still want to kind of leave room for qualifying my opinions. Like the song says. The song has it all, honestly. I don't know why I'm talking. We have 5 reviews to go through today. We have Space Explorers, Whitechapel, Great Western Trail, and City of the Great Machine. I've actually played a bunch of these multiple times, but I'll go through each of these, why I'm calling them first impressions in different ways. Honestly, I'm realizing now, this one should be a review. This one is here for a different reason that we'll get to it. Honestly, maybe we'll get to it first. We'll get to Space Explorers first. Let's do Space Explorers first and then get to that. So, Space Explorers, I'm realizing the reason I put it in this video, I'm only realizing now as I'm filming, but it is what it is, we're going to leave it here, is because I wanted to still go through the expansion content on this game. So I actually could review the base game. It's more that when I feel my experience has been lacking, it's more that I haven't played the expansion content, which for a while I've been holding off on playing this holding off on filming a review because I wanted to film the expansion. I wanted to play the expansion content, which I haven't done yet. I have the full expansion, I haven't played any of it, and I think part of that is because I wasn't excited enough by my initial plays of this game. I got Space Explorers from 20th Century Games because of the fact that it was compared to Splendor, but better. But caveats. The game's rated okay on BGG. It's not rated amazingly so. It's rated decently enough. Splendor's rating is definitely higher, but there were enough people who said this is like Splendor, but more interesting, more things going on that make it a more engaging experience. I like Splendor, but Splendor to me was a game that, after enough plays, I felt like I had seen what the game has to offer and wasn't as interested in playing through it. Space Explorers does share core DNA with Splendor. If you've played Splendor, it has that aspect where you're kind of acquiring stuff that builds up a tableau, and that makes other things easier to acquire, except in this case, it's cards. Well, in Splendor, it's also cards, but in this case, the cards are also the things. You have these cards over here. You're basically building up a tableau. You have these cards over here that are going to work towards your tableau and make it easier to acquire more stuff. You also have those equivalent things over here, which are these little goals to go through, and they're, again, if you've played Splendor, akin to like the nobles in Splendor. So you have these kind of overarching things that'll be worth chunks of points. You have these cards that are worth occasional points, but also are worth resources. But then you also have abilities in play. That's where the game gets different and interesting. And it's fine. I found the overall process of gathering things more obstructed. It is like Splendor, but more complicated. But complicated does not always mean better. In the case of Splendor, maybe a more complicated Splendor could be a good thing, could be a better thing, could give me more to think about and do. In the case of Space Explorers, it didn't make the game better. It just added convolutedness to the game experience. It's not a bad game. For me, Space Explorers is going to be a 3 out of 5. I'm fine with it, but in a world of many great games, Space Explorers felt like it was doing Splendor a little worse, not a little better. And I don't even have Splendor anymore, because like I said, I've already kind of played through that. Again, this one could have been its own review. I actually have played it multiple times. I mentally was thinking of it as a game. I wanted to see more of it, but it's more the expansions I wanted to dive into. I just haven't gotten around to. In general, by the way, videos for games in this First Impression series might be sometimes they're games that I literally just didn't play enough and they're new. Other times they're often games that I've been holding onto for a while because I want to continue diving into them, and I get to a certain point where I realize that at a certain point, an opinion is better than a more nuanced, more in-depth opinion 4 years from now. So that's going to be Space Explorers over here, our first game. Then we have Great Western Trail. Great Western Trail, specifically Argentina. Now, the original Great Western Trail I've played, I don't know, a lot of times. A lot's relative, I should hold off. When I say that I played the original Great Western Trail a lot of times, I mean maybe I have 7, 8 plays in my belt. Again, a lot compared to a game that gets played a few times, but not a lot compared to people who on BGG are saying things like I've played Great Western Trail 140 times. Not a lot of times. I never fell in love with Great Western Trail the way many people in the board game space did. It's what I think the second edition is like the 25th highest game on BGG, and that's the second edition, meaning like that's not even accounting for the fact that both editions combined. I don't even know what the math on that would be. And Great Western Trail is very well loved. I think it's an 8.3 if I recall correctly on Board Game Geek. It might have changed since I last saw that, but either way, Great Western Trail, it is a well-loved game that I always enjoyed and never felt the love for. There's a bunch of games that fall into this weird category of games that I continue to give time to because of how well they're received, but I also like it enough that I was able to continue giving it time and kept playing it hoping that I would see that magic, and in all these cases never really did. Games like Arc Nova, games like Great Western Trail, games like Scythe, these are all games that I enjoyed them enough that I was like, I'm gonna keep playing. I'm gonna find what this magic is about. And in the case of Great Western Trail, the original one, I never found that magic for me. I like the game. It's a, I don't even know if you call it, it's not really a race game. It's a tableau game where you're going along this route and you're kind of building buildings as you go, and then you're doing a degree of deck building because your cattle kind of define a lot of the actions, but then also as you get to the end, you're selling your cattle and you want a variety of cattle. So there's a degree of deck building which feels weird. Like, Great Western Trail to me is a game, I love deck building, and Great Western Trail to me is a game that doesn't feel like deck building, but it kind of is. It's just there's not really abilities, there's just colors of cattle in the game. Either way, I've always liked the game. It has powers and abilities, it has an arc, it has a thing. It's always been a good game that for me has always been too long for the experience that I get out of it. The original Great Western Trail for me would be a 3.5 out of 5. I kept trying to like it more. I've always enjoyed it, and I never got to the point where I fell in love with it the way the rest of the world has. The reason there's so much lead up to that is before I give my opinion on Great Western Trail Argentina, it's worth knowing that my opinion of the original Great Western Trail is already lower than the average. It doesn't mean that the opinion's invalid. It just means that if you're watching this video and you have no context of the game, understand that I'm talking about a game that has a really, really, really well-received opinion overall, that my opinion is different. So if you have found that your tastes align with mine, great. Take that into account when you're choosing whether to buy these games or not. And if you don't know if your opinions align with mine, I recommend checking out a second opinion on it. Bringing us to Great Western Trail Argentina. Basically, I was going to say basically the same game, but people who know the games well would lose it at me if I did that. It is a very similar arc with some differences added on. The port cities and the way those are added as opposed to the regular destinations from the original Great Western Trail, the addition of workers or farmers, the addition of a new currency, or not currency, but like the resource, the wheat. You're kind of playing around with the same idea. It's a little less tight as far as the actual amount of money you have in the game, so the game experience is a little less tight than the original Great Western Trail, which some people love, some people hate. I personally like the fact that it's a little less tight. It's not to say that the game is less strategic. It gives you more things to consider on your turn, more things to do in the game. It's continuing the same basic arc of the original Great Western Trail, which again is going to have all those kind of loose talking about that I've given you there. These are not going to be full in-depth how to plays. These are more just thoughts and opinions on the games. But I like the fact that Great Western Trail Argentina is a little less tight, and I like the extra things you can do in the game. And again, I think this game is rated basically the same as Great Western Trail, so I don't know which one is better or not in a traditional sense. For me, I would say I prefer Great Western Trail Argentina because I like the feeling of being able to do a bit more, but also you might be overwhelmed by the greater amount of things you can do in a game that already is very brain burnery in the game and how the game plays. So one's a little more tight, one's in both the economy of both the literal economy of the game, but also the types of actions you can do and how you can get forward, and one is a little looser in the gameplay. I prefer Argentina, but it still doesn't elevate my opinion of the Great Western Trail franchise enough. It's still a 3.5 out of 5 for me. Again, this is one of those games where there's so much going on that I don't feel an opinion based on a few plays is really enough for a game of this weight class and this general respect, which is why I'm very much lumping it into the first impressions category. But I like it, I enjoy it, I could keep powering through it. I have other Euro games that I prefer more, both games that I know and love, or games that I'd rather table because I haven't gotten a chance to table them yet. From there we have Great Western, we just said Great Western Trail. From there we have City of the Great Machine. City of the Great Machine from, what's the name of the company again? It's Crowd D Games. This is one that I've played twice. I played it once during the prototype phase when the original game was. There's actually a film playthrough of me playing this way back when. So I played the City of the Great Machine way back in the prototype phase, and then once since it's delivered. This is a one versus many game, where the one is the city. It's the Great Machine. It's this whole, City of the Great Machine. It's the Great Machine, which is the steampunky vibes and gears, and literally you have a city where you're going to be moving. Let's see if we can show you over here. You're going to have like this board over here, and you can literally be moving the board around different ways, which is important because the many are these other people over here who have a degree of secret movement as they choose where to move around in the grid as you're trying to capture them. It has lots of powers and abilities, lots of trying to plan around different things, and it's very overall, it's very well done. This is a hard one for me to juggle, and it's one that the reason I've held off on reviewing it until now is I've wanted to play the solo and or co-op variants before I gave a review, but I just don't know when that's happening, and so here's my first impressions of it for right now. But this main gameplay modes that I think I would enjoy more. I think I would enjoy the solo or co-op mode more. I just don't know if I'm prioritizing getting this one played right now. The core game as is good. I enjoy City of the Great Machine. It is a good game. Again, it has powers and abilities, hidden movement, one versus many. Well, I don't know if one versus many is inherently good, but it works. The whole system works overall. I think the main thing that holds it back for me, compared to other games in the genre, is you can definitely have frustrating turns. I think hidden movement in general is a genre that's very hard to get perfectly right, because sometimes you know too much of what's going on, in which case it doesn't feel enough like there's a lack of information. And sometimes you don't know enough of what's going on, and that feels too much like if you know, okay, I lost my train of thought. You either know too much, in which case there's not enough information, or you know too little, in which case it feels too loose. Like, I've played hidden movement games where I got caught, or like I'm the hidden person, I'll get caught or not get caught, and I still don't feel rewarded because the game still feels too loose. It feels like when I get caught, I just got lucky. Like you, the person finding me, got lucky. And when I don't get caught, it wasn't challenging enough. So you really gotta get that balance perfectly right. And I find some games do. This game, I don't know if I feel this one has the balance perfectly right. I think that as the operatives or whatever, as the many, there are turns that are just frustrating because your plans are thwarted left, right, and center, but it doesn't always feel like that was knowledge or really degree of planning so much as, hey, you're just constantly hitting and lashing out. Now again, I'm not trying to take away from the strategy. There is strategy. There is thinking through that whole, what would you do? How would you do that? I just don't know if I feel that perfect balance was there. And there's a lot of rules around just all the other things happening. It's not a clean hidden movement game. My favorite hidden movement game is Mind Management. And one of the reasons is it's very, very clean, although you can add things, but adding things is kind of like you layer it on slowly. So it really works well as far as adapting around the players. But then also it's a shorter experience, it's not an overly complicated experience, and it really nails that balance perfectly. Like, at every game of Mind Management, it's not a review of Mind Management right now, but every game of Mind Management I've ever played has always had, at some point or another, one side feels like they're winning, like they feel like they're in control. And there's usually an arc as far as when and how that plays out. Either way, it's not Mind Management. It's more just kind of talking about why I feel City of the Great Machine is very good and very enjoyable, but ultimately still a step down for me. This is going to be a 3.5 out of 5 for me. The reason I want to play the solo or co-op is those moments of frustration around how some things can play out. I find those are things that don't happen as much when it feels like a collaborative. When the degree of luck kind of hits in certain ways, like let's say you're playing a game like Zombicide. Again, this is not a review of other games, but we're talking about other games. If I'm playing a game like Zombicide, the idea of the crazy dice rolling left, right, and center, and the luck of how things will just play out over the course of the game, it works in a cooperative experience. I don't think I'd want to play Zombicide in a competitive experience. Now, granted, Marvel Zombies does have a competitive mode. I haven't played it yet. I eventually will, but it's one of those games where I don't know if that kind of game experience works for me in competitive. When things feel lucky, I want to feel like a team being victim or beneficiaries of that luck range as a team. In a competitive aspect, it feels less fun. So this is not a heavily luck-driven game, but I think that when you have hidden information, sometimes it gets luck adjacent when you're trying to figure things out. Either way, I think City of the Great Machine is good. I think the theme is delightful. I think it's an overall good game. It's a 3.5 out of 5 for me, but it is still, I really wish I was playing that solo or co-op mode. Then we have Whitehall over here. Whitehall is basically Letters for Whitechapel, but quicker, I think is the quickest way the quickest way I'd describe this. This is basically Letters for Whitechapel in the core idea of the gameplay. If you've played Letters for Whitechapel, this board will seem very familiar. It's got that same arc and vibe. I don't know what the official goals were for Whitehall, but it feels like the goal is to make the game experience quicker. That's what it feels like the goal is. This is still a game that I'd only really rather play at 2 players, and this, for context, is one I've only played once. I played Letters for Whitechapel many times. I have played Whitehall only once. And I don't know if it drastically changes my opinion of Letters for Whitechapel. There's pros and cons to the experience. The first pro is it is quicker as far as the game goes. And it feels a little different, by the way, because like this one feels a bit more like a race as far as you are trying to deal with hidden information. It is there's 2 hidden information games, sort of, hidden movement-ish games. Anyways, you are dealing with the hidden information as you go through it. And by the way, that's a big difference. This one is a hidden movement game where the many are hidden. This is a hidden movement game where the one is hidden and the many are closing in. Different vibes as far as how those operate. But Whitehall overall feels a bit more as like a race as far as you don't have as much time to obfuscate things. Let Us Whitechapel, the nature of being a longer game experience, means that a lot of the game is about really trying to make it not clear where Jack's base is in the game. Like, where is Jack's base? Where is he trying to retreat to? Because if the investigators figure that out in the original Let Us Whitechapel, then eventually you'll be able to just pin him down and stop him every time the new thing happens because you know where he's heading. So really, Jack does have to spend that time elongating his route in different ways, and that's a big part of the core experience of Let Us Whitechapel. Whitehall, by the nature of being a quicker game, it changes the pacing of the game. It is a bit more race adjacent as opposed to deductive. There still is deductive aspects going on, but sometimes Jack kind of doesn't have as much time to play with things, and it is a bit more about how quickly can you get things done with your action economy of the game, with possibly a bit more information from the investigators, but it's a faster game experience. I do think it's a little less thematic-ish. I don't know. Thematic is fine. Thematic is fine. I think that overall for me, rating-wise, I would put this in a similar vein to Let Us Whitechapel. To me, that game is a 4 out of 5. This is also a 4 out of 5. Although, for context, just make sure we're on the same page, it's still not a game I'm personally keeping. I don't have the original Let Us Whitechapel anymore. It's one I have access to. People in my game group have it. And this is one where I don't know if I have a strong opinion as to which one I would prefer to play. That's the tricky part for me, because I think I prefer Let Us from Whitechapel a marginal amount. And it's very marginal because the gameplay aspect from Let Us from Whitechapel, the fact that you can be a bit more clever as Jack, does give you more room for how the game can play, but it does so at the cost of a longer game time. And that is, I do value short games, so it is a hard trade-off. What I would say is you have to kind of choose for yourself, which is if you think you value a shorter game at the cost of some of the options of the gameplay, Whitehall will do that for you. If you think you'd rather have the options of the gameplay, Let Us Whitechapel will do that for you. For me, it's hard to choose. They both do a good job, but they're similar enough I don't want both. And again, in my case, I don't have either, only because I only want a few hidden movement games in my collection anyway. And even though both Let Us Whitechapel and Whitehall are a 4 out of 5 for me, I have higher rated games in the hidden movement category, and those are just going to be the ones that stay for right now. But yeah, I do think Whitehall is good. I think it's worth picking up or checking out. If you're coming at it new to the series, if you are someone who hasn't played either, which one would I recommend? Possibly Whitehall? I think I'd probably recommend Whitehall if you're new to the series. And that's part of the bias, by the way. I should mention bias. I do tend to have a bias towards the thing I played first. Meaning, I as much as like the cult of the now is always a thing. When something new is coming out, I'm excited and whatever it is. But I usually do lean a bit towards the things I played originally. So I would argue, if I'm this torn about which one I think is better, it might be that Whitehall's better. But I just played Let Us Whitechapel enough that I have more of an affinity towards that one. So I'm gonna go with, I'd probably recommend Whitehall if you're new to the series. Otherwise, it's kind of pick your poison as far as which one you choose. Which brings us to lastly, we have 4 of these done over here. Lastly, we have Mythwind. Mythwind is the one on the table that I've actually played the most. I've played this through the prototype phase, and I've played it a whole bunch of times since the prototype phase. This is a game that you can theoretically play forever. Coming to you from Open Isle Games, Mythwind is a game that, well, you can play forever. That's the idea. You're in this valley, and you enter this valley, and there's a story, and these little sprites, and these sprites have little encounters, and you have little things that trigger story encounters. And then you have, in the base box over here, you have 4 asymmetric rolls as far as the things you can do to grow the valley. Basically, there's an arc where you're going through this arc of gameplays and whatnot, and you have like this weather patterns, and you have those events that are going to happen, and you have buildings that you're trying to build. This is where I'll try to show you the back of the box over here. You have buildings you're trying to build in this valley, and you have your own personal player boards and tableaus. You have the whole building arena over here, and you're trying to place them down to various spots because the buildings will make your life easier. Now, can you lose this game? Not really. You can have challenges that you didn't meet in any game session, so you can play a game session where you didn't get the things done that you were trying to do, but you still got the resources, you're still moving your forward. Just the better you are at doing the things the game wants, the faster you are able to build out the valley. So it is a game that kind of doesn't really give you a clear objective. What is winning? What is losing in the game? Hard to really say. And to the point that, by the way, I was very critical of the original prototype, and my opinion has gone up. It's still not a game for me, but my opinion has gone up since the original prototype. Like, the original prototype, I don't know if I officially rated it, but I probably would have given it a 2 out of 5. I really felt very aimless in that prototype, in a way that I do think the final game did improve the structure of the way they handled it. The direction the game gave, because I want that aim. Why am I playing this game? Why am I sitting down here and playing the game? And they did a much better job as far as the way you can have ongoing encounters that just expose you to the world, as well as specific game sessions that you're trying to do each round that do make the arc of the game feel a bit more, I think it's hard to really define it what they changed. And honestly, I don't know the exact list of what they changed. But I would say the original prototype, I got a strong sense of why am I playing this game. And since playing it, I don't think that the game itself has been as much the focus. The focus for me is, can I achieve these objectives in this game session? And then separately, what can I unlock as far as the overarching story of the game? So it has done a better job doing that. Now, the reason I'm calling this a first impressions, and again, my goal with this was originally to play through all the 4 factions and be able to give you nuanced thoughts on them. I haven't played through all 4. I've only played through 2 of the various factions in the game so far. I don't remember the name, the farmer person and the tinkerer, worksman, whatever it is person. So I haven't played through all 4 of the factions of the game. I've only got to experience 2 of them. And I think that the game is a weird combination of a little bit of grindiness, a lack of an overarching reason why you're playing the game, possibly reasons why you're playing an individual session, because again, you have those session goals you can work towards, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to work towards session goals and explore the world. I do think I enjoy the arc, but I don't think I find it challenging enough for me to I liked it enough that I was like, maybe I'll just play 2 or 3 sessions with each character and then be able to give you a full-fledged review on that. And I don't know if I'm going to continue to power through that. It's not bad. I just think that I have many, many games on my plate at any given time that I'm trying to get played, both games for coverage as well as games in my personal collection. And while I do enjoy Mythwind more in this current form than I did in the original form, I still think that it doesn't do enough for me as far as how mechanically tight the game is, and the level of discovery around the valley isn't enough to pull me in. So my rating and opinion of it has gone up. I would call it a 3 out of 5 for right now, with a caveat, and this is a weird caveat. It's a 3 out of 5 with the possible bumping to a 3.5 only because of the sense of discovery. I want to learn more. I want to see more. And so there is a twinge. I probably should give it a 3.5 because ratings should be all-encompassing. I'm going to give it a 3.5. Again, mechanically, I do not think it's a 3.5. Mechanically, it's definitely not. But I do have, for me, if you look at my ratings down below, they each have a meaning, and the difference between a 3.5 and a 3 is that do I have a twinge that I wish I could have played it more. And I do wish I had more time to play this more, not because of the mechanics alone, but because of the sense of discovery, which is still a factor. It's still a factor in why we play games. And so the game gives you a sense of discovery, it gives you a lighter mechanical palette, and a game that has a sense of grind, but still has reasons to dabble in it. I would never play this, by the way, at 4 players. You could play it at 4 players, I would never do so. For me, this is a solo or maybe a 2-player experience, and honestly, I think I prefer solo. I've done both. I would almost certainly prefer this one solo. So that's my opinion on Mythwind over here. So, first impressions reviews, again, all games that I wish I had more exposure with, except for Space Explorers, which is really about the expansion. But we have a 3 out of 5. We have a 4 out of 5, similar to the original game. City of the Great Machine is going to be a 3.5 out of 5. Great Western Trail, Argentina, another 3.5 out of 5, although again, my opinion is definitely lower than the norm in that one. And then Mythwind, where my opinion, I guess I'm gonna stick with that 3.5 out of 5, as long as you just know that the mechanics are lighter than that. It's the full package that gets a 3.5 out of 5. And in the case of until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. This has been the first video in my first impression series. My first impression series. I still feel like I'm saying serious. This has been the first video in my first impression series. And I don't know when the next one is, because it'll happen when I have 5 first impressions to do in a single video. And in the case of until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.